I hope you're doing well and welcome to the Horn Broadcasting Channel. My name is Mtalam Kusia. Today we want to talk about how Western NGOs influence the Horn of Africa. Are they development partners or instruments of foreign policy? The Horn of Africa remains one of the most strategically important regions in the world. Stretching from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, the region includes Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, and neighboring states that sit along some of the world's most busiest maritime routes. It is a region rich in geopolitical significance, economic potential, and security challenges. For decades, Western governments and Western-funded non-governmental organizations, commonly known as NGOs, have maintained a strong presence throughout the Horn of Africa. Officially, these organizations work to provide humanitarian aid, healthcare, education, governance support, conflict resolution, environmental protection, and human rights advocacy. However, critics across the region increasingly argue that some NGOs are not merely humanitarian actors. They contend that certain organizations may influence political processes, shape public opinion, and advance foreign policy interests of donor countries. This debate has become one of the most controversial issues in the politics of Africa. Today, we examine the allegations, the realities, and the complex relationship between Western NGOs and the Horn of Africa. To begin with, it is important to acknowledge that the positive contributions many NGOs have made during periods of drought, famine, civil conflict, and disease outbreaks. The international aid organizations have often been among the first responders. In Somalia, humanitarian organizations have delivered emergency food assistance during devastating famines. In Ethiopia, NGOs have supported health programs, educational initiatives, and refugee assistance. Across the region, millions of people have benefited from projects funded by Western governments, foundations, and charitable organizations. Few will dispute that these efforts have saved lives. Yet alongside these contributions, concerns have emerged regarding influence and accountability. One of the primary criticisms centers on funding. Many NGOs operating in Africa receive substantial financial support from Western governments, development agencies, and foundations. Critics argue that organizations depend on foreign funding may intentionally or unintentionally reflect the priorities of their donors. For example, when donor countries prioritize governance reforms, electoral transparency, media development, or human rights programs, NGOs may focus heavily on the areas. Supporters see these as strengthening democratic institutions. Critics view it as external influence over domestic affairs. This debate has surfaced repeatedly across the Horn of Africa. In Ethiopia, governments of different eras have occasionally accused foreign organizations of interfering in domestic politics under the banner of civil society development. Authorities have at some times introduced regulations governing foreign-funded organizations, arguing that national sovereignty must be protected. In Somalia, where state institutions have struggled to rebuild after decades of conflict, international organizations often play significant roles in service delivery. While many citizens appreciate the assistance, some analysts argue that excessive dependence on foreign-funded actors can weaken the development of local institutions. The issue becomes even more sensitive when NGOs engaged in areas related to governance, elections, institutional reforms, media training, or public advocacy. Supporters argue that such activities strengthen democratic participation. Critics counter that they may influence political outcomes in ways that favor particular ideologies or external interests. Another concern frequently raised involves narrative control. Many international organizations produce reports, studies, and policy recommendations that are often widely cited by foreign governments, international media, or global institutions. As a result, NGOs can play a significant role in shaping how countries are perceived internationally. A report highlighting corruption, human rights concerns, or governance challenges may draw global attention. While such reporting can encourage accountability, some governments argue that it can also create one-sided narratives that overlook local complexities and achievements. The debate over human rights advocacy is particularly contentious. Western organizations often promote universal human rights standards. Many Africans support these principles and view them as essential protection for citizens. However, critics continue to argue that foreign organizations may promote social, political, or cultural priorities that do not align with local traditions, religious beliefs, or societal values. This tension has fueled political debates not only in the Horn of Africa but across the continent. Another issue is the question of economic influence. Development assistance often comes with a recommendation regarding governance reforms, economic policies, transparency standards, or institutional changes. Supporters argue that these measures may improve efficiency and accountability. Critics argue that they can create indirect pressures on governments to adopt policies favored by foreign donors. The result is an ongoing debate about where development cooperation ends and political influence begins. The strategic importance of the Horn of Africa further complicates the discussion. The region borders critical shipping lanes connecting Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. It hosts military facilities operating by multiple global powers. It is also central to concerns about migration, counterterrorism, energy security, and regional stability. Because of these factors, major powers have strong interest in developments within the region. Some analysts argue that NGOs can become part of the broader ecosystem of influence that include diplomatic missions, development agencies, media organizations, and international institutions. That does not necessarily mean that NGOs are acting properly. Rather, it highlights the reality that humanitarian work often exists within larger geopolitical environments. The key question is transparency. Citizens have a legitimate interest in knowing who funds the organizations operating within their countries, what objectives those organizations pursue, and how decisions are made. Likewise, NGOs have a legitimate interest in protecting their ability to provide humanitarian assistance and advocate for vulnerable populations. Finding the right balance remains a challenge. Many experts argue that the solution is neither unrestricted foreign influence nor blanket hostility toward international organizations. Instead, they recommend stronger local institutions, greater transparency, robust regulatory frameworks, and increased support for local-led civil society organizations. If African governments invest in education, research institutions, think tanks, humanitarian agencies, and independent civil organizations, they can reduce dependence on external actors while maintaining productive international partnerships. Ultimately, the debate about Western NGOs in the Horn of Africa reflects a larger question facing many developing regions: how to benefit from international cooperation while preserving national sovereignty and local ownership of development priorities. As the Horn of Africa continues to evolve economically and politically, this conversation is likely to retain at the center of the regional debates. The future may not lie in rejecting international partnerships altogether, nor in accepting them without scrutiny. Rather, it may lie in building relationships based on transparency, mutual respect, accountability, and a clear commitment to local leadership. That is the challenge facing governments, civil society, international partners, and citizens across the Horn of Africa today. If you've got any question, contribution, or any comment, please do so in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. My name is Humanitarian, and this is the Horn Broadcasting Channel.